Hey, welcome. As you have already seen, today we are in for quite a long video, as I'm going to be going over the supplements and the essays that I use in my Common App and QuestBridge applications. I applied last year and I was accepted to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Brown, Penn, Dartmouth, Vanderbilt, Williams, Amherst, among others. This was actually the most requested video based off of my last video, which you can see I will link down below, in which I gave a lot of advice and honest reflection on what I did that actually got me into all of these schools. So if you find this video helpful, you will definitely also find that video useful. So go ahead and check that one out after you're done with this one. With that being said, I also just wanted to give the disclaimer before I start that there is not one way that you can write to get yourself into elite colleges. So just know that my example is meant to be one of many and that your style shouldn't be trying to emulate mine. So with that, let's get into some supplements. I'm going to start off with one that I wrote for QuestBridge. But really, this could be a supplement that you write for any college because it's super common for them to ask you about a meaningful activity or ask that you write about something that you did outside of class, an extracurricular, something along those lines. So this is the one I wrote for QuestBridge and it had a 400 character limit. Freshman year, the speech and debate team had no coaching, funding, or previous finalists. In competitions, I was humbled but dead set on improving. The two biggest skills I learned in high school were from the team: how to be good at anything, practice relentlessly and without excuses, and how to pass on experiences so that the next generation starts with a heads up, teach people how to be teachers. So that was it, but as you can tell, I use a lot of different styles of punctuation, which is something that I actually do recommend that you try to use at least in some of your essays. Try it out, see if it feels natural for you, but for me personally, it helped me emulate a lot more of a natural speaking style and just gave my writing a lot more interest when you're reading it so that it's not just plain text, but something to break up the eye visually. With that said, let's move on to my supplement number 2, which is what is it about Yale that led you to apply? This was 125 words or fewer. So obviously this is an example of an extremely common prompt. You will, for a lot of schools, have to be writing about why that school, why did you want to apply? So here's my example for Yale. What I expected of a Yale newspaper, strict formality, rife with self-importance, couldn't be further from what I ended up reading. I had picked up the Yale Herald and surprised myself by laughing at the scarily accurate article about trendy school supplies that every girl at my school seemingly bought overnight. Each writer's voice shined through the sarcastic snippets and colorful articles. Upon more research, I was stunned by the number of student publications. Clicking through the list, I fantasized about which ones I would join. They had distinct slants: feminism, politics, local news, which demonstrated that students had the passion and agency to turn their time at Yale into whatever they wanted, and will find others who share their goals along the way. So here's the next one I submitted to Stanford. It reads, the Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on an idea or experience that made you genuinely excited about learning. And this one was 100 to 250 words. Oh, and a note for this one, I did not actually save the final edited version of the supplement, but it's virtually the same thing. The only change that I do remember making before I submitted to Stanford was that I actually mentioned MIT by name once at the very start, so I just took that part out because I figured that it would be maybe kind of bad to actually mention one of their direct competitors in the STEM world, so I did not mention MIT. But other than that, I'm pretty sure my supplement was about the same. So let's get into it. I had signed up blindly for Spark classes, informal classes taught by MIT undergraduates to middle school and high school students, selecting them based on what I knew the least about. Thus, a lesson about quantum physics seemed like a natural choice. The student teacher explained a setup with black and white electrons going through boxes, asking the class at every step what they predicted the outcome would be. And every single time, our guesses proved incorrect. Yet by the end of the class, there was the outline of a logical pattern just beginning to form. Something I couldn't fully grasp, yet noticed nonetheless. He closed by saying that the concept he explained was called superposition, and that if we wanted to learn more, there was a book he recommended, as well as MIT classes on the subject, which were recorded and uploaded to YouTube. The class was so mind-bogglingly, curiosity-sparkingly interesting that, despite my previous interest in anything STEM, I went home and immediately bought the book and looked up the courses he mentioned on YouTube. After a summer spent struggling through the book and several failed attempts to understand any content beyond the first lecture, I realized that I needed to rethink my approach. The next year, I entered high school, where I was enticed by the prospect of taking physics as a way to one day grasp the concept I had just begun to learn. So far, I'm still on track. And so I wrote that one because I obviously had taken AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 in high school, and this didn't really fit in with the rest of my application. So I thought that kind of explaining that quirk in my course selection would give myself a little bit more character and explain what I was thinking throughout high school. So here's the next supplement. At Penn, learning and growing happens outside of the classrooms too. How will you explore the community at Penn? Consider how this community will help shape your perspective and identity, and how your identity and perspective will help shape this community. Again, that was 150 to 200 words long. At school, I have peers who worry about becoming homeless, peers who I never see outside of school because they have to work for 40 hours a week or have to care for their younger siblings, and peers who struggle to communicate because they are embarrassed by their English. These issues are so rarely discussed that to even hear about them from the people sitting next to me in class demands attentive listening to anyone with the courage to speak. It is a blessing and privilege of mine to be surrounded by a community of people who offer different ways of understanding the world, and I am excited to engage myself in another such community at Penn, one that offers diversity in a broader sense by drawing people from across continents, ideological spectrums, and disciplines. In any conversation, whether it comes from exploring the Intercultural Center or just talking with someone at lunch, what I hope to contribute most is not what I say, but what I do when I'm not speaking. Listening with empathy. At Penn, I can develop my ability to listen by exposing myself to completely new perspectives and grow beyond what I can even imagine right now. So those are all my supplements. Now let's get on to the main event, my essays. So the first one I wrote for Questbridge was 800 words long, but I'm actually not going to share that one here. I'm sorry, guys. It was just a little too personal, so I didn't feel comfortable. But I'm going to be sharing my second essay, which is the 500-word one, first. And so, just a note, I changed the name of the town that I mentioned, because obviously it was the name of my hometown, so I didn't want to give that away. I changed it to something more generic of a name. But other than that, the essay is the exact same. So here's the prompt that I chose. Option 3. What do you admire most about your community? What would you improve? Again, that was 500 words. So now let's get into it. Diversity is what makes Springfield, Springfield. Walking around the streets of my city, it is no more common to hear English than to hear Portuguese, Creole, Arabic, Spanish, or Vietnamese. My friends come from the most remote Romanian villages, the smog-covered metropolises of China, and anywhere in between. Our diversity enriches every talent show, every potluck, every lunchroom conversation. We share our opinions frankly because everyone is expected to have a unique perspective. This is what I admire most when I am in Springfield, and what I miss most when I leave home. School principals and local politicians love to brag about our school being the most diverse one in the state. but the enthusiasm in their voice rings hollow. They see our diversity without its imperfections, M-, as if it comes without hardships. They act like their claim to diversity is an award they have won rather than an immense responsibility that they carry. When I started to attend city council meetings, it saddened me that out of 11 counselors, 10 were white. That, plus the all-white audience, a white mayor, and a white superintendent, made it evident that our representatives were not representing everyone. Not was in italics. Springfield is certainly a city of immigrants, but it is not by or for them. There is always an uneasiness, as if Springfield is one giant apartment where the rent is getting higher and higher and higher, and no one's actually living here, just buying time until we're evicted. And Springfield will stay this way unless something changes. There are many systemic challenges faced by low-income immigrants when it comes to civic engagement. No spare time to vote, no transportation to the polls, no English comprehension, no knowledge of the candidates or the positions or where to vote or how to vote. In a perfect world, I would rebuild everything from the ground up. Everyone is a first-time candidate, everyone receives the same campaign funding, and everyone is automatically registered and informed how to vote. But I also know that aiming for a perfect world as a starting goal is doomed for failure, We have to work within our limitations. Instead of changing old habits, I want to create new ones. That's why I volunteer with a voter registration drive at my school to plaster the wall with flyers and man a table outside the cafeteria with registration forms. That's why I help organize meetings with my local and state politicians to talk with high school students. I see the two-way conversations it creates, where students learn how local politics affects their lives, and politicians learn how to represent the youth and their families in Springfield. I want this conversation to expand until it becomes the kind of inescapable buzz that gets in your ear and makes you ask the people around you, in quotes, "Hey, did you hear that?" My hope is that this brings the underprivileged and those in power even a tiny step closer on the long path towards the two groups becoming one and the same. So now I'm going to read my Common App essay, and it's entitled "Like Pulling a Rabbit from a Hat." So this one was a 650 word limit, and I'm pretty sure I was like right up there on the word limit. Entering preschool, an alternate dimension where I went completely overlooked amongst a throng of screeching toddlers, brought on a wave of introspection. Who am I? What makes me unique? What passion should I devote my life to? But, like all 4-year-olds, my conception of self-identity was fairly straightforward. What's my favorite color? My pillow is blue, so blue. What's my favorite number? I am 4, so 4. What's my favorite animal? Of course, it had to be the class pet, a rabbit. Defining these 3 things felt like monumental decisions that would ground my entire existence. And, surprisingly, 4-year-old me was not entirely off her mark. Ask me these questions 14 years later, and I will give you the same 3 answers. Blue, 4, and, in all caps, rabbits. But I have learned that lifelong obsessions do not come easily, Like friendships, they require more initiative and dedication than one would anticipate as a child. I did my part by proclaiming to the world my new favorite animal and swiftly adopting several plush rabbits. My room was repurposed as a menagerie for rabbit knickknacks and my wardrobe as a trove of rabbit apparel. Without fail, my reaction to every rabbit picture became cooing, awing, and melting in my chair from the almost unbearable adorableness. Strangely enough, I had chosen rather arbitrarily bunnies as my favorite animal. so I had to train myself to love them at first. I invested time searching up rabbit care facts, in parentheses, diet, hay, pellets, vegetables, lifespan, 7 to 10 years, cuddling, yes, close parentheses, to prepare myself for the pet that I could never quite convince my parents to buy, despite years of pleading. This research locked me into the mindset of a bunny lover, and I soon found my exaggerated reactions naturally bubbling up from a well of love that sprang out of the groundwork I laid. If rabbits were going to exist either way, why not be excited about them rather than indifferent? This proved to be a convincing argument, not only for myself, but for everyone around me. My friends, relatives, and acquaintances excitedly scramble for their camera phones whenever they spot a bunny in their yard. My mom buys us matching bunny pajamas. My best friend even adopted 2 actual rabbits after being entranced by my spell for so long. My obsession spreads like wildfire, or like the plague, or like gossip at an all-girls lunch table. Except, unlike those things, it brings joy along the way. When I promoted my candidacy for class president by handing out over 300 hand-folded origami rabbits, the whole school went bunny crazy. Semicolon. Students played with them at recess, traded for different colors, and asked for extras to give to their siblings. Whenever I shriek in excitement, parentheses, which is often, my brother inevitably comes plodding by my room to say, "Okay, show me the bunny picture." Whether it's because people share my passion for bunnies, or simply because I'm happy and they feel like being happy too, the result is always the same. My bunny obsession draws out a pure, childlike delight from everyone, M-dash. Even people too old to remember that you don't need an excuse to be excited, because even the simplest things have hidden wonders to offer to the curious. I stubbornly cling to my bunny obsession, not because I still feel insecure out of clearly defined labels, nor because I have fallen madly in love with rabbits, but because I love to love them. Bunnies are a reason to be overjoyed when I have no reason besides wanting to be overjoyed, and because other people are overjoyed when I'm overjoyed, and I'm overjoyed when other people are overjoyed. It's a win-win situation that, like pulling a rabbit out of a magician's hat, toes the line between frivolous illusion and genuine magic, depending on whether or not you can view it from the eyes of a child. So that was it. That was all of my essays, and those were all the main examples of the different types of supplements I wrote. I just want to emphasize again, as I was reading it out, it sounded like I used a lot of different crazy punctuation, but honestly, I picked some of the most well-written examples out of all the supplements I used, so don't feel like you have to use all that punctuation all of the time, otherwise it will definitely become repetitive to see that much. But other than that, yeah, my only other advice would really be to make sure you're writing in your own voice. Your essay should be something that you could actually see yourself saying out loud to someone. At least that's how I approached mine. Obviously, you might have a different style, like if you want to be more poetic or more analytical, then go for that 100%. But that was the approach that I took to writing my essays. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that you found this video useful, and definitely let me know in the comments what you thought of my essays and what you want to see next. And until then, see ya!